What's going on, guys? In today's video, I'm going to show you how to edit with the newest version of Insta360's Studio 2021. This is completely different than the previous tutorial I've done for this software. If you want to check that out, check out this card right here. But without any further ado, let's jump into the software and I'll show you how to use it. All right, so here we are in Insta360 Studio 2021. You can see that they completely overhauled the software. It looks completely different, but luckily, it's actually a little bit easier to use than before. Here I have some Insta360 1x2 footage. I'm going to select all by hitting Command A and then dragging and dropping it to the side panel over here. And for those of you who are wondering, I'm using the new 16-inch M1 Max computer. This software is fully compatible if you decide to get that MacBook too. All right, so we have some footage of me riding my scooter here. So on the side here, this is going to be your file explorer. We have some options right here, such as camera files, favorites, and exports. If you have your SD card inserted, you'll start seeing files populate right here. But right now I'm going off of my SSD, and I just drag and dropped it into this Explorer panel right here. Right here, you can sort them by the camera you used, file size, file type, data created, ascending and descending. It's all up to you. These options right here will give you the thumbnail previews, and if you just have your mouse hover over, you can drag it and you can actually preview the clips. This is something that we didn't have before, which I really like. You can switch the view to this smaller thumbnail version, and then you can switch it to the list. I'm gonna keep it actually at this preview right here. This is kind of like Final Cut, so it's very familiar to me. So I'm gonna start off by actually editing this clip right here. I'm just gonna double click on it. And immediately on the bottom here, you can see our new look of the timeline. And I actually added keyframes previously here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna completely take this out. And if you edit this footage on the previous or older versions of Insta360 Studio, those keyframes will be saved on this newer software. But if you don't know what keyframes are, let me explain that to you in just a second. Okay, so one of the first things that you're gonna notice here is that they changed the preview. It looks different. So they have the 360 view, which is not what we're gonna be editing in. We're gonna be editing in the reframe view, because this is how we're actually gonna drag throughout the frame. As you notice, I can use my mouse by clicking on the frame, dragging throughout, and just changing the overall framing of the video. This is, the view that we're gonna be working on. This is just a view that you can mess around with, look at everything, but I rarely use this view. It's really kind of pointless if you ask me, so I'm just gonna use the reframe view. All right, and just like any other video editing software, at the bottom we have our timeline, so you can just click through and scrub through everything just to get a simple view of what your footage looks like. And now you're probably wondering, how are we gonna start editing our footage? Well, first off, you need to be happy with the current frame that you're looking at. If you're happy, you're gonna click on this plus button right here, which is gonna add our first keyframe. Now this keyframe is very important because this is gonna dictate how our camera is going to be oriented. Okay, and if you notice, we have a bunch of different options right here, such as field of view, and you can add in your own specific parameters for the field of view. So if you want something to be fisheye, which is the default, you can click on the fisheye head right here. If you want the crystal ball effect, which is actually one of my favorites along with Tiny Planet, you could just click through any of these options right here. And don't forget, even though the options change, you can still drag your mouse throughout these options and create some really trippy videos overall. So that's really neat. And that will be added to your first keyframe. Now let's say you want to drag your mouse and scrub throughout the rest of the clip. You can add another keyframe and reframe the whole video. So if you wanted to go from, let's say, Tiny Planet to fisheye, all you have to do is click on fisheye and check out this animation. It's just gonna automatically go to that new frame that you chose, along with the position. So you can change the position throughout the shot and it will automatically go to that new position. And if you just click on the keyframe and you want to change it or delete it, just hit delete. Very simple. You also have the option, of course, to play the audio, mute it, make it louder, however you want. We also have trimming options as well. So if I decide to go throughout the clip and I want this beginning cut out, all you have to do is hit this left trim button and it's gonna automatically trim all the way up until where your pointer was. Same deal for the end of the clip. You hit this one right here, it's gonna trim everything to the right of where your cursor was. So they made it very simple. And if you want to redo an edit, or undo an edit, I should say, hit Command Z, and just like any other software, it goes back to the way it was. So it's very simple. So let's say I want to put in my own parameters. So if I want to drag and go throughout the frame right here, and I want to add a keyframe, let's go ahead and do that. You can actually make your own specific field of view by dragging these numbers here. It's going to change the viewing angle based on the number of degrees. So you can change rotation, scale, anything you really want. As you can see here, you can make things as wide as you want to. You can make things zoom in, zoom out, however you want. Look at this. See, this is new. This is not what I've seen before on Insta360. So this is a new little feature we have right here. But this is pretty unique, and if you want to create, again, like I said, those trippy videos, this is a great option for you. You can of course hit this button right here, which will make everything default in case you made a mistake. And yeah, those are our simple options. Hit this drop down arrow right here to make it go away. And now let's talk about auto track. And auto track is a great feature in Insta360 Studio. It's actually very quick as well. So if you have a lot of motion going on in your video and you don't want to keyframe everything, because keyframing can take a lot of time, you can use the auto track. So that auto track option is right here, and you're gonna have a little pop-up coming up here saying that it cannot track when you've made keyframes. So just click OK, delete any of the keyframes because it's gonna have to overwrite those keyframes. So what you're gonna do, you're gonna choose the frame that you want, then select the subject. I'm the subject here. I'm just gonna drag a little box over me and let's see how well it tracks. There you go. It's tracking pretty well. And you can see that it's tracking everything in real time, and it's doing a very decent job. So I'm pretty happy with this. So at any time you can hit stop tracking, and if you play back the footage, you'll notice that it automatically reframes the footage so that I'm always in the shot. And there you go. It's as easy as that. And you can always make adjustments. If you weren't happy with the auto track, you can reposition that box on a different subject or make it wider, smaller, however you want, if you wanted to make a more accurate track. Great. So if you want to delete your auto track, all you have to do is click it, make sure it's highlighted, then hit the delete key. And if we go to some of the other options right here, they moved all of the actual aspect ratios to the right part of the software. So if you can see right here, we're actually editing at 16:9, which is a typical, widescreen ratio. We can click on this and change it to 1:1, which is square. So this is good for social media like Instagram. You can continue to change it. Here is vertical for, again, Instagram or TikTok. 16:9, just like what we saw earlier. Then we have 4:3, again, good for social media and ads and all that good stuff. And then 235:1, which is an extra wide cinematic view of what's happening. So yeah, it's very similar options to what we've already seen from Insta360 Studio. And don't forget, if you want to make very fine-tuned adjustments on your timeline and you want to scrub through the footage and really see what's going on, use this zoom in and zoom out feature if you want to make very fine-tuned adjustments or keyframes to the footage. So you could just zoom in just like that. Our time shift options, and for those of you who don't know what time shift is, it's basically retiming of the clip, have been moved as well to the right part of the software. All you have to do is click on this lightning bolt, and you can see here that you can adjust the timing. Right here, it's gonna actually speed up the footage. We can also make it shorter, longer, however we want. And if you click on it, you can make it go slower, like half speed, quarter speed, and it's gonna play back very choppy because I shot this at 24 frames per second. Or you can make it go all the way up to 64x, and yeah, it's gonna play back very fast. So those are the retiming options right there. You can also add motion blurs. So if you're doing a lot of time lapsing or star lapsing or time shifting, as Insta360 puts it, add a little bit of motion blur because it's going to add to that realism and that cool cinematic effect that everybody loves. All right, so right under the aspect ratio option, we have the take a snapshot option, which will just take a quick snapshot of your current frame or preview that you have right here. Let's go away from my legs here. By the way, this was shot during the summertime, so I had a lot of mosquito bites. We don't want to look at that. All right, so let's say I want to take a snapshot of this, send it to a friend. You can easily just snapshot this, and it's gonna save it to your desktop or wherever you want. Really simple. And right under that is the full screen preview, which will allow you to preview everything in full screen. Now let's go to the actual camera settings like stabilization. You're gonna find that to the right, similar to how Insta360 Studio had it before. Right here, this is our stabilization options, flow state stabilization and directional lock. So directional lock will actually keep the orientation the same throughout the whole entire video. So if you want your angle to stay the same, use direction lock. That's really important. So that way you don't constantly have to reframe everything. So direction lock is really good. It's gonna use the 360 camera as only one angle, one field of view. And again, just like our previous Insta360 Studio, we have flow state stabilization. You always have the option to turn that off. And it's actually shocking to see the difference between having no stabilization and stabilization. I mean, it's pretty obvious. And as you can see, the orientation is completely different when stabilization is turned off. So you're gonna have to re-keyframe the orientation if it is turned off. So I'm gonna go back to actually 16:9 so we get a clearer view of everything. Yeah, see, you can just change the orientation however you want. But again, you're gonna get very shaky footage and it becomes very difficult to control as well. And right under that, you're gonna see the stitching options. And if you watched my last tutorial on editing 360 footage, you'll know that, when you're editing 360 footage, you're working with two different cameras, two different lenses. And what it does is it stitches those two lenses together. There's ultra wide lenses. And with that, you're gonna have a subtle blind spot. And you're gonna have a blind spot with the 1R, you're gonna have a blind spot with the 1X2. Really doesn't matter, every camera's gonna have a blind spot. So this stitching helps create a seamless blind spot. So that's really important. So right now I have it set to normal, but if you have a case or lens guards, you have the option here. As you can see, it changes the frame a little bit. You can see some weird distortion happening right here. This is because I don't have a case or lens guards on, so it's trying to compensate for that. So if you have different accessories, make sure you have the proper stitching enabled. Right under that, we have the media processing options. Aquavision 2.0 is just in case you film underwater, you can always select this option and it's gonna compensate for that color change underwater. You can also adjust audio options, which is actually new. I haven't seen this before in the previous versions of Insta360 Studio. It's possible that I missed it, but I haven't seen this before. So it looks like that we can change the audio options. So if you weren't too happy with how your audio was captured, you can change that option right here. I'm gonna go back up here and just turn on stabilization again. And yeah, that's those options right there. Below that, you can actually have the option to, just like previous versions of the software, add in your own logo. You can put in the Insta360 logo, for sharing around social media. I'm not sure why it's upside down, but it might be just the orientation. Yeah, I don't know why it's upside down. That's kind of funny. But you can change the size, you can change the position, top, bottom, right, left. I usually leave this option turned off. I like to have my shots clean with no logos in them, but you can also have the option to put in your own logos too. And right under that, we have project management. So you can actually create new projects. This is also something that I haven't seen on previous versions of Insta360 Studio. Basically, all my footage would be in one project that I wasn't able to change, but now we can actually separate different projects from each other. So again, maybe I missed that in the previous versions of the software, but I haven't seen this before. So you can create a new project. This is becoming more and more professional for videographers and content creators. It's really important to have the ability to separate projects and put in different clips in those projects. So that's really important. And if you're worried about finding your footage again, click on this arrow. Sometimes it does shrink. So just remember that it's always right there. Okay. And right below that, we have file properties. So you can actually look at the frame rate, at the actual quality that you shot at, all right here. So if you need to double check to make sure you can film everything in slow-mo or edit everything in slow-mo, you're gonna find all those options right here. And you can see that we shot at 95 megabits per second. So I wanna, kind of export at that similar bit rate. I wanna get the best quality possible, and we shot at 5.7K, which is great. All right, so once you're done editing your software, you can go ahead and click on this export button. They made it very similar to Final Cut and Adobe Premiere. And here we have the option to export the reframed video or the 360 video. So if you want to edit this footage in Premiere or Final Cut without it being already reframed, just export it as 360 video, then input it or import it into Final Cut or Premiere, and you can edit that 360 footage there. Or reframed video is what we already edited within this software. And bitrate, I want to export it at the similar bitrate that I shot it in. Resolution 1920 by 1080. This is standard if you are reframing the footage. If you want the 360 look, then you keep it at 5.7K. But if you're using this camera directionally, it's going to drop resolution down to 1920. So remember that. And encoding H.264. H.265 is better for compression, and it only works with a small variety of computers. A lot of computers can't handle H.265, so if you want your computer to edit this guaranteed, H.264 is what you should be exporting at. But the new M1 Max or the new M1 computers from Apple can handle H.265 and ProRes 422, so these options are all doable. And last but not least, we have Color Plus and Remove Grain. Just like the previous versions of Insta360 Studio, you can check this to make more vivid colors, or you can check this to remove grain and shadowy or darker areas of your shots. Don't forget that when you enable these features, it takes longer for processing. Once you're done with that, you can add it to the render queue or start the export right away. The render queue is very important. You can actually edit all of your footage, then send it to the render queue and continue working while it's rendering. So again, just like the previous versions of Insta360 Studio, this is a really neat feature. You can also check out the export history, but these right here that are in the export queue haven't been rendered yet. So when you're ready, you can just right click and start export. And it will use the export settings that we just selected along with the path, and it will save it to that path. So really simple, guys. And yeah, if we go back to our footage here, and if I highlight all of them, I could technically send all of these to the export queue. If I click on Start Export, go to Add to Queue, you'll notice that it will pop up in the export queue. And once I'm ready, I can highlight all of these clips, right click, Start Export. And you can see the little circles here that pop up. This tells you exactly when things are being rendered. So eventually this list will start to shrink when things start being completed. I'm actually going to cancel this export because I don't need these clips. But yeah, very simple, guys, very easy. If I didn't cover anything, let me know in the comment section below. But this is basically the gist of all the controls of this software. It takes a little bit of getting used to, especially if you're new to 360 footage. But if you have any questions, again, let me know in the comment section below, or email me, DM me on Instagram, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. All right, guys, happy shooting, and I'll see you in another video. Peace.